Okay, so this is text 33. Text 33. And it's Amayo Yascha Bhutanam Jayate Yena Suvrata Tadeva Yamayam Dravyam Na Punati Chikitsitam. O good soul, does not a thing applied therapeutically cure a disease which was caused by that very same thing? So you can see that was like the main theme. Prabhupada gave the example of milk preparation. So again, Narada Muni speaking, saying, O good soul, does not a thing applied therapeutically cure a disease which was caused by that very same thing? And then the verse before that, number 32, in chapter 5 of Canto 1. O Brahman Vyasadeva, it is decided by the learned that the best remedial measure for removing all troubles and miseries is to dedicate one's activities to the service of the Supreme Lord, Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna. And the verse after the verse that Prabhupada spoke on, number 34 is, thus, when all a man's activities are dedicated to the service of the Lord, those very activities which caused his perpetual bondage become the destroyer of the tree of work. And then continuing a bit, Narada Muni speaking, whatever work is done here in this life for the satisfaction of the mission of the Lord is called Bhakti Yoga, or transcendental loving service to the Lord, and what is called knowledge becomes a concomitant factor. Okay. So would anyone like to share any comments or realizations or ask any questions based on Prabhupada's lecture?
I have a question.
Ramachandra.
Yes, I was actually thinking to ask that like last few classes.
Yeah.
I think your class on last Saturday or something. Yeah. Like my personal process coming out of like the brahmachari sphere, living in a temple and doing everything for Krishna, which was seemed to be like very easy at that time, like being protected under like the temple structure and the rigid like schedule, and of course everything was for Krishna.
Yes.
It was not a question, like everything is offered, all the Lakshmi is used to, I don't know, buy books or buy boga for Krishna or buy a temple for Krishna and coming out of that, and like now I'm like, okay, considering how I'm gonna make this like householder life like work, like Grihastha ashram, I see that it's like almost seems like almost impossible. Like how to really like Prabhupada says, if you don't do it for Krishna, you're going to hell, basically. Sort of, that's what I picked up. You're going to be entangled in karma, and who knows which form of life you're going to take. And I mean, it's just very difficult for me too, because I mean, I want to continue the process of liberation, purification, but how to like do it in like an atmosphere which seems to be like contradictory to liberation in a sense.
In an atmosphere that seems contradictory to liberation, as opposed to like a temple atmosphere, the temple structure that Prabhupada created. It's the Vaikuntha atmosphere. It's an oasis in Kali Yuga, and it's meant for liberation and developing Krishna consciousness. Yeah, so that's your current life dilemma.
Yeah.
And process. Thanks for sharing. I don't know that I have Damayanti, please respond. I want to hear.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Well, I picked out a quote once from Prabhupada in a purport somewhere. He said, "Household life is hell." So
thank you.
It's affirming. And also my experience of it is that there's plenty of purification. There's constant surrender. You're constantly practicing surrender, dealing with the other people in your family unit, and So that will definitely be there, and you can dovetail that surrender. It's to make it Krishna conscious. So anyway, it's hopeful, and it's also true that it's hellish.
Thank you for your encouraging response.
Why Malini is laughing so hard? She wants to say something.
Maybe she just wants to laugh. Yeah. So this, this discussion. I appreciate the question, and Damayanti, your philosophical and personally realized response. And it's so relevant. I know for our community here, whatever we're called, Bhakti Yoga, Transformative Communication, because pretty much no one who's kind of people who really connected with Krishna consciousness, Prabhupada, through Safato programs, they don't have your history. And so I'll sometimes say, because they Damayanti, Garuda, Parampara, Rohini, Lakshmi, Priya, Anasuya, Charlene, Kara, George, Danielle, etc., etc. And so unlike you and Gajendra, Malini, myself, Daru, Brahma, Rukmini, those who are coming to Krishna consciousness, I think also Bhaktilen doesn't have a history in ashram, like a temple life. So I'll say sometimes it's a disadvantage, and it's also an advantage. It's a potential disadvantage because that structure is so strengthening. I'm very glad for those years I spent as a temple devotee. Very, very, very strengthening and provided such a foundation for my life of Krishna consciousness. And so where that's relatively missing, then we can say, oh, something feels missing. At the same time, what I've witnessed is that those who don't have those years of experience in temple life, a disadvantage can be they just never become strong. They just never become solid because that structure is not there. Just like a tiny plant, a tiny seedling, a seed gets, and it's in like, as you said, like the whole Kali Yuga atmosphere, and the plant never grows to be a strong redwood. At the same time, for many in our community, it's so inspiring because in one sense, they need right from the beginning of their Krishna conscious life to be independent. They need to figure it out for themselves, how to navigate Krishna consciousness, not in the protected Vaikuntha temple life. Krishna consciousness while working the job and raising the children and dealing dealing with, just very worldly things. And so I found that kind of independence forces them to create their own structures, forces us to create our own structures. And then I'm noticing that many who are doing it successfully, including those in this conversation right now, successfully doesn't mean easily or always joyfully, but those who are doing it successfully, that they have a strength and a depth of devotion and dedication that comes from, in a sense, independently taking responsibility for their Krishna conscious life in service to Prabhupada, that some or many who had the temple devotee years of experience never get. And then they have those who had that strength of the temple devotees, and in a sense the structure is figured out for you for whatever months or years you're there. But then many of those, as life goes on and they're no longer in that protected space, then they become weak, or they even give up the practices because they're often lacking that sense of I am responsible to create the structures that will support me. So I don't think I gave an answer for your question, but I'm just giving some experience and what I've been witnessing. Any other comments or questions?
This is Gajendra.
Gajendra, yeah.
Yes. Sorry, I'm on my pad. I can't figure out how to raise a hand. But so I just want to comment in following what you were talking about, just my own experience. Anybody, who over time has heard from me knows I was around back in a little bit in the 70s when Prabhupada was still present. And I say that not to give away my age, but because it was really, truly a really special experience to live in the temple ashram at the time. And it was really two things. It was that protected environment that you described that was very cradle-like for Krishna consciousness. And at the same time, it was one of the most challenging, rigorous boot camp experiences of getting your ego broken and being unbelievably challenged to a point of harshness. And it was really an extreme of both. And it was very wonderful. And, listening to you talk about, well, maybe people who didn't go through that or somehow in their life didn't choose or find themselves subjected to that wonderfully difficult experience to grow with. I also appreciate how much I just learned from people who never went through a kind of extreme cultish phase. I feel like I've really, I almost kind of feel like they've had a maturity, and I've kind of learned from them maybe how to be more natural about Krishna consciousness. And so I really respect that. And there's an old saying that I don't really hear much. I heard it way back in the day. And it was, Lord Chaitanya saves the most fallen first. I don't really hear it much anymore, but I personally remembered it and appreciated it, as a point of humility. And there is a part of me that feels, not proud, but humbled to the people that have come and had the experience of a more natural life. They brought their talents and their skills and their sense of being, the more mature sense of being. I just wanted to express that. Those various things.
Thanks for that, Gajendra. I'm moved, and I'm moved by what you share, and I resonate with it. And thank you. Bhaktin Sarah.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
I was listening to the bit about milk being the cure for both, like being the cure and the disease. And that makes me think about doing activities in life. I know I think I've asked a really similar question to this before, but it really gets me, like, sometimes it just feels like cheating. I'm doing something and I say I'm doing it for Krishna, but it's like the same thing I would be doing already before. And it's hard for me to trust or feel like, yeah, I'm doing it for Krishna. It just feels cheating. And I wonder if we can talk about that.
Sure. It's so directly related to what Prabhupada shared. Do you want to give a specific experience or example or confusion or?
I mean, it feels like a lot of things. Eating, for example, is a really easy one to talk about.
Yeah. Eating, yeah. Okay. So Prabhupada started his lecture by saying, too many rasgulas are not good for us. I'm not sure about that point personally, but I guess I trust Prabhupada at some level. So, eating is a good example. And so because everyone eats, and our eating gets us entangled in karma. I mean, Prabhupada gave like a very in a very instant karma, if we eat too much, we suffer disease. If we eat the wrong foods, if we eat too little, it's just just in the material realm without even getting too philosophical. And actually, the experience of many many in India, is like even if one eats, this is a general experience, if one eats even a little too much or the wrong thing, there's like immediate disease karma, which stuff we might get away with, elsewhere. So, right. So the idea is, all right, so we become spiritual, we don't eat. So Prabhupada calls it, that's the impersonal, that's a Mayavad idea. But so then this yukta vairagya, which means to engage everything in Krishna's service, is like, no, they're spiritual eating. And Prabhupada gave us the process for that, and it's called prasadam. It's called prasadam. So now, even if and still after more than 40 years of taking prasadam, I'm still eating for me. I'm not like, it's rare that I have glimpses of, yes, I'm nourishing this body, then I can use this body in devotional service, or I'm pleasing Srila Prabhupada by eating prasad. I mean, that's the mentality I want to develop. But even if I'm just eating to enjoy my tongue and belly, okay, at least there's some structure to eat only prasad, to eat only prasadam, and that's a way. So that's a basic structure, that we make a commitment that in the eating process, because we're going to eat, in the eating process, that's a basic structure. Let's eat only prasad. And then we're eating in a way that's pleasing to Krishna. It's a sure thing. And Prabhupada gives us a way to prepare this prasad, to offer the prasad. And there's simple short forms, and then there's more elaborate forms. And so the eating process, it's very clear how to dovetail in Krishna consciousness, how to do it for Krishna. And then, then within that, there's, okay, well, I eat only prasad, so that's a beginning. Then we can develop, we're really seeing that this isn't my body, it's Krishna's body. And let me nourish the body. Let me really eat with a view towards, and I get to use this body. Let me take care of the body, to use it in devotional service. And in eating, let me appreciate this is all provided by Krishna. Let that be my, okay, well, then that gets into higher forms of devotional consciousness.
Yeah, thanks for that. I really appreciate that you mentioned the structure around prasadam. And so then for other things, like I'm doing my work for my job, and I don't feel that there's a structure necessarily for offering that and discerning how much is this entangling myself in others versus how much can I really offer this particular activity to Krishna and feel like that's, a good thing to do, sincere.
Thanks for that. Yeah. So then, for many, it can get more complex. Like with the eating, it's pretty straightforward. Then with the working, and this relates, because I know you're in the Bhagavad Gita course, Sarah, and so especially when we get to chapter 3, it's called Karma Yoga. Chapter 5 is called Karma Yoga, Action and Krishna Consciousness. So it really describes a continuum. And okay, at one level, kind of like, well, maybe this work, I'm not seeing how it's directed to Krishna consciousness. I'm just doing it to earn a living or whatever. Maybe even I believe in it, but it's not really spiritual. Okay, but then, all right, so I get some paycheck. then let me be responsible that any food I buy with this will become prasadam. It will become prasadam. Let me, okay, I'm going to pay the electric bill. I'm going to take care of my house or my apartment. So let me use this apartment for kirtan, for being on Zoom Bhagavatam discussions. And then the work becomes spiritualized, at least at a primary level. The work becomes spiritualized. And then, okay, and then it can be like, okay, then we may get more inspiration. All right, let me find ways to distribute prasadam or distribute some of Prabhupada's books, some transcendental literature to those I work with. Let me find a way to integrate meaningful philosophical Bhagavad Gita-based conversation during the workday. And then maybe even there's a way where the work itself can be dovetailed. There's so many examples. So many examples. We heard from Anandini. She's an educator in Switzerland, and now the educational organizations are bringing her in to give talks, and in their language, she's essentially presenting Srimad-Bhagavatam, and we heard recently from Yogeshwar Prabhu. He's doing that in the field, believe it or not, of economics and investments, and he's actually giving Bhagavad Gita philosophy. And then the more we chant, the more we follow regulative principles, come to morning programs, eat only prasad, then we get realization in any field of endeavor. Maybe butchery would be an exception or something, but practically in any field of endeavor, how to directly engage in Krishna service. But okay, maybe it's like, I'm just not getting that in my particular job. That could be. Then at least, okay, let me make sure I use the money in Krishna service. Let me maybe try to just engage during lunch break with my colleagues in something that supports ourselves to come closer to self-realization. So it's like a continuum of karma yoga that eventually merges into bhakti yoga.
Thanks for that. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
I just had a quick thought. Sarah, you were appreciating that there's a structure around prasadam. And I don't do this, but I mean, every once in a while I've offered something that's not food to the altar. I've done that before, not very much, but I mean, we could have a structure around every time the money comes into our bank or a check comes into our hand that we do, and we go and we ring the bell and we make an offering, officially. It could be, we could develop a structure like that. To make the process more Krishna conscious of receiving the income.
Thanks for that, Damayanti. I see a chat. Rukmini writes, the analogy that came to mind for me while hearing the first discussion is organic growth outside temple versus cultured growth within the confined protection of temple life. Now, 'tis the organic season. Thanks for that, Rukmini. Thanks for that very much. Yeah, there's definitely advantage, like where it's kind of like if we're living in an environment where it's kind of like, there's no question about not getting up at 4 a.m. and going to Mangalarti. No, there's healthy peer pressure. You're going to get up at 4 a.m. There's something to be said for that. And then there's something to be said where I could sleep till 8 a.m. I could sleep till 10 a.m. I could get up at 6. I could not go. And I'm choosing not connected with any peer pressure to get up at 4:30 a.m. and be at Mangalarti, and at 8 a.m. to be at Bhagavatam class. Malini.
I just want to add something to that is, for the last 30 plus years that I'm in Krishna consciousness, I see how Krishna, Srila Prabhupada, really is guiding the wandering of all the living entity in a very individual way, and how the medicine is given according to the deceased person and according to who they are. And that includes how people come to Krishna consciousness. There's such a broad spectrum of how people come to Krishna consciousness. I know some people will live in the temple for years and they will not have made it outside of the temple. Like they will not have chanted Hare Krishna for the length that you chanted Hare Krishna if they didn't live in the temple, and vice versa. Some people will have joined the temple and the austerity, sacrifice, interpersonal difficulties, and all, it's quite horrid in a sense to live in an ashram, will have been too heavy and they will not have been capable to maintain their Krishna consciousness and not being able to chant Hare Krishna for any length of time. So I'm thinking like of the perfection of Krishna and Srila Prabhupada directing the wandering and giving the medicine according to how the person can absorb the medicine. And not that, not that one is better or like that. Yeah. That's what we are saying here. But I can see that. I can see that in my own life and the life of others. I can see some people, they will not have made it in a temple, but they make it very well by the organic, following my path. And there is other people who have not made it at all outside of the temple. And they made it in a temple. And then hopefully is that we are growing in our spiritual life in each situation to come to a higher level of independence and responsibility for our spiritual life, understanding that determination and confidence and AKR, like intention, is not depending on any external.
Thanks for that, Melanie. Yeah, it's not like one is better than the other, and you're focusing on Super Soul Krishna. Srila Prabhupada is personally reciprocating with each spirit soul according what's going to challenge them and support them, to challenge them to grow and lovingly support them according to the person. Very, very personal.
Yeah. And I wanted to add something to what Sarah was sharing, because one part of what Sarah you shared, I understood, is like how do we know that we are not cheating ourselves? Like I could be like, okay, I'm going to play guitar for Krishna, but in reality, I really want to play guitar because I enjoy guitar, for example. Or I'm not saying that for you, Len, but or so many things that I can be telling myself, yeah, I'm doing it for Krishna, but in reality, it's just self-deception. And how to trust myself to know if it is self-deception or if it's really truly an offering to Krishna. And so that's why I understood part of your question, Sarah. And that's a question I've been thinking about for many, many years, maybe 30 years. And I'm still thinking about it because I believe that it's both are always there, that there is always a part of us that tries self-deception, and that this self-deception is going to be there until we fully surrender to Krishna and fully accept to be part and parcel of Krishna and to offer everything to Krishna all the time. And then part of the process is more and more being willing to be honest and being willing to be truthful about when we do deceive ourselves. And that deception is there, is just there in all of us to some degree or another until we are truly liberated and with Krishna. So part of the process, like learning truthfulness to be able to more and more being able to make distinction and accepting to see our self-deception and where it is and where it takes place.
Thanks for that, Melanie. Yeah. The very beginning of Bhagavatam starts with Dharma Projita Kotiva Trap Pramani Matsamanam. So this Bhagavatam really is for those devotees who are thoroughly honest. And so this relates to our introspective process. It relates to getting to know Prabhupada more and more. Because as we get to know Prabhupada more and more, then we can see it, then we can make those distinctions about what's really for Krishna and what's not. And it relates to surrounding ourselves with association, true true friends who are willing to be true friends, who are aspiring to know Prabhupada and serve him, and who are willing to be honest with us.
I'm hearing a lot also accepting my humanity.
Accepting your humanity. Thanks for sharing that, Sarah. Bhakta George.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
What is present with me is Prabhupada's clear message not to cheat. Sometimes I'm thinking that in order to offer my activity or some activity to Krishna in the context of a world of cheaters and the cheated, the only way to do it is to cheat. And I was asking Danielle that last night. I was like, is cheating to render service to Krishna, like, is that a thing? Or I'm appreciating Malini's comment about self-deception. And so to hear Prabhupada say that this morning clearly is like serendipity. I'm thinking it takes some faith, and I think in one of the lectures that we did, it was described faith as openness to receive or receptivity, where, the context is such that I don't know how to do this service in any other way. And it's just having faith in Krishna to fill that missing puzzle piece. So I'm appreciating Prabhupada's clear direction personally this morning in regards to not cheating in the course of rendering service.
Thanks for that. Thanks for that, Gjergj. Yes, that was, Prabhupada indicated it's the material nature to the extent that we're influenced by the lower modes, and Sarah's comment, accept our humanity. I have the propensity to cheat, make mistakes, be fooled. But Prabhupada, when in the cheating part of the lecture where he was talking about the cheating propensity, he mentioned, this is a historical note. He mentioned the President of the United States, maybe he gave the name Nixon, but actually this lecture is from August 74. I was thinking it was given maybe 1 or 2 days after Nixon actually resigned. Nixon resigned in August 74. So Prabhupada that was a very internationally known example of cheating, getting exposed. It was right there, practically the same day. And then, of course, Krishna does make it clear in Bhagavad Gita that Krishna says, of cheaters, I am the best. I'm just giving that perspective, that because I can certainly look at how it was not fair. I got tricked into coming to Krishna consciousness. It was cheating. Prabhupada is complicit. It's not just Krishna. Prabhupada is complicit. Prabhupada said prasadam's our secret weapon and that whole thing. So I appreciate your sharing, Gjergj. Yes, also I'm reminded of the verse, Tesham satata yuktanam bhajatam pridipurvakam dadami buddhi yogam tam yena mamupyantite. That Krishna is saying that, okay, to one who's sincere, I'll give the intelligence. And I like your humble expression, Gjergj, that, I don't have the intelligence how to dovetail this. So let me try to be sincere. That's our main job, to try to be sincere, to serve Prabhupada, serve Krishna. And then Krishna will arrange and give intelligence in ways that probably beyond what we could conceive with our mind and intellect. Thank you, Gjergj. Gajendra.
Hare Krishna. So I want to connect to all of this, going back to what Sarah had brought up, and you're mentioning, like the offering prasadam and yukta vairagya, all the way through George's comments and regarding sincerity. So what I'm connecting this to is actually, as I do, Upadeshamrita, where Rupa Goswami talks about, as one point, not following the rules and regulations of the scriptures only for the sake of following them, but for spiritual advancement. I think that's close enough. And so it's, when you take something like offering prasadam and coming from the, the sincere place that Sarah's talking about, wanting to be present, aware, conscious, what are you actually doing devotionally in relation to Krishna? So, where, the sort of worst case that would kind of miss sincerity and miss all that would be like, for example, getting into machine mode or doing mode of like going to the store, thinking about all the wonderful things you want to eat, and then, bring it home, do the machine function. The altar's a prasadam machine here, meant to gratify my senses. Now, this is the
I feel exposed here. I feel exposed here.
It's the deity's job and service to my tongue to be there for me. It can get really messed up if we don't have the real devotional presence. So I mean, I appreciated the whole conversation again from Sarah's bringing up the point. Like it takes consciousness and presence. And, part of that even connects to like, I don't have to offer these things on the altar, but I get to with devotion, so something like that. I just wanted to connect it to Rupa Goswami.
Thanks very much for that. Yeah, the Niyamagraha principle, that is, it's not helpful to, I'm following these rules, so I'm okay. But Rupa Goswami's go, yeah, but he's asking us to ask the question, am I missing the forest through the trees? The trees are the different rules. So yeah, Rupa Goswami warns against whimsically, frivolously neglecting rules and regulations that will really support us to transform our heart and advance in bhakti. And he also cautions us, as you're very nice. Thank you, Gajendra. He cautions us about following rules and regulations without consciousness of the essence and the real purpose. Thank you, Gajendra. Damayanti.
During this conversation from, when Sarah brought up like feeling like not very satisfied about whether like she's cheating or not. And I think that's what I heard. I've been reflecting on like when I hosted all the monthly programs, which I started to host the monthly programs in Krishna consciousness, Bhakti Yoga programs, only like 3 or 4 months into my experience of Krishna consciousness, practicing Bhakti Yoga. And over those years, I definitely like questioned my motivation. I wasn't a pure devotee. And so I had mixed motivations. I mean, going back to childhood, I just have this desperate feeling of like loneliness. And so like, I have this intense feeling like gathering people around and, satisfying something deeper that, so I have like deep early childhood motivations to like get the satisfaction I didn't have then. And I had like desire for appreciation. I could see that sometimes in those months and years. And I noticed that, and I learned about mixed motivations and Krishna consciousness through those experiences, and was able to start to identify my motivations. And but I never like was deterred from doing it, because I knew it was still the right thing to do, and like also like my nature and like what I was inspired. It was still inspiration to do it, even though like I have mixed desires. And I was reflecting, my most sincere prayers when offering prasadam was at the monthly programs, because I wasn't thinking about gratification. I wasn't hungry. I wasn't just lusting over the food or desiring it. I was just like so thrilled to be of service. And I would sometimes be crying while offering the prasadam during those programs when I'm in just full service. And so anyway, it was such a mix. And lately I've been noticing how much of a mix of illusion and devotion I have within me. And lately I'm just starting to feel like it doesn't matter if I'm in illusion, because Krishna can take any moment in the middle of that. And I can also take responsibility in the middle of that. And I'm going to be in illusion. It's just a part of like the situation I'm in. It doesn't really matter. I don't have to get caught up on like, what is my motivation and what is my consciousness? At any moment, Krishna and I and Prabhupada, you know, we can co-create something Krishna conscious. And I feel liberated lately, like, you know, oh well, and of course, and it's still hopeful. So thank you for hearing me.
Thank you, Damayanti. I appreciate your sharing, again, personally and philosophically, that like, you're looking back years ago and you were hosting a monthly program, and you can see that you had you had different motivations, and some devotional, some sattvic, some stuff from childhood and loneliness like that. But whatever. But you did this program, which is fully in the structure of Lord Chaitanya and Prabhupada. You using your house, using it like the Prabhupada said in the lecture. Yeah, the process is the same. We just need to change the account. So you're using your house in Krishna's service with mixed motivations, but because you gave yourself in that structure, when you offered prasad, that you connected with deep devotion, even bringing you to tears and offering. It was not mechanical. It was so heartfelt. So that's, we give ourselves to the structure, and then whatever our motivations from wherever we're at, and then through that structure we get purified. And thanks for sharing that experience. I'm seeing let's see. So from George's comment, I read also that Prabhupada encouraged by hook or by crook for getting books to people, for collecting Lakshmi for Krishna. Kind of controversial, but it seems he dovetails even the cheating propensity. That's wonderful, Damayanti. Transcendental trickery to spread Krishna consciousness is fun. Okay. Yes. Okay. So well, there's this one thing I'll say is this term by hook or by crook, it meant something different in 19th century British English than it does today in American English. And then that is really something to look at if we want to look at what Prabhupada is saying there. And like we can think of crook as being a criminal, like we mentioned Nixon. So Nixon again in one of his speeches said, I am not a crook. But crook, it referred to a sort of tool, or sort of cane with a hook at the end, or anyway. But so Prabhupada did make it very clear in distributing books or in any profession that the devotees of Krishna, the devotees of Lord Chaitanya, should be known as perfect ladies and gentlemen. In fact, once he was asked, I think it was on an airplane, he was sitting next to a priest or something, and he was asked by the Christian priest, well, how can we know who's a Vaishnava, who's a devotee? And Prabhupada's answer was, they are perfect ladies and gentlemen. They are perfect ladies and gentlemen. And and Prabhupada said that, he said, if someone's disturbed in your attempts to distribute books, that's your nonsense. So we should see all these things in context. And at the same time, it's not like, all right, so the main thing is to follow all the laws like that, this and that. For example, like if devotees, through all sorts of trickery and subterfuge, and putting on, disguising himself this way and that way. And devotees managed to get Bhagavad Gita and Srimad-Bhagavatam and Chaitanya Charitamrita into the Arab countries where it's forbidden. Well, it's forbidden, so we shouldn't. No. So there is a higher principle, right? Because like there's the ordinary dharma and or ordinary goodness and compassion. Arjuna had that, but again, there is a higher principle. We don't want to abuse the idea that there's a higher principle to become to just become inconsiderate people who are not ladies and gentlemen. So Prabhupada said that a Vaishnava, ladies and gentlemen. And at the same time, sure, Prabhupada and our acharyas are so happy if devotees, by whatever trickery, get books into Russia before the wall fell, pre-1989 Russia.
Wow.
Yes, Arab countries, China. What I heard is some devotees, because they had their father was actually the owner and founder of a big alcohol liquor company. Okay, I won't say the name. And so one devotee went into China as a representative of a liquor company because it was his father's business. And he distributed massive amounts of books to the Chinese. So, that's not more. No, Prabhupada's really pleased by that. Yeah, okay, but that's like, devotee really willing to do trickery. I have some experiences in Muslim villages. Actually, in Muslim villages, mostly in Israel, the best way to dress is dhoti, kurta, shaved head, tilak. I am not a nice Jewish American boy. I am like if I went in as a nice Jewish American boy, then that would be very dangerous to the villages we went to. So yeah, sure. There is a time to transgress. There is, and to cross the boundaries of ordinary laws and morality and legality to really serve. And we don't want to use that as a cheap excuse to have low class habits. Okay.
I had a personal experience once with Prabhupada being really displeased around me doing, it wasn't like cheating on book distribution, but I was too harsh on someone who was very harsh on me. He was like a born again Christian who was like trying to, and he was like really tall and big, and he was preaching to me and trying to explain to me that I'm with the devil. And somehow by philosophy, I made him cry actually through philosophical argument, but I guess that was too in a harsh way. And then in the same night in my dream, and Prabhupada, I met Prabhupada in the dream, and Prabhupada, he called me a nonsense, and I exactly knew why. I exactly knew why, and since then I knew better.
Thanks for sharing that. Thanks for sharing. Thank you all for your association. Srila Prabhupada ki.
Yeah.
Srimad-Bhagavatam ki jai. Being aware of, wow, in the mix of truth and illusion is the beginning of the solution. Thank you, Rukmi. Jai. Wishing everyone a Krishna conscious day. Hare
Happy birthday to Kampara.
It is.
Hare Krishna.
Happy birthday, Parampara.
Hare Krishna. Jai Prabhu.